everyone, I'm Mandy-Lynn Donovan, and I'm your host of Port City Personalities here on Rogers TV. Thanks so much for watching. We have a great show for you planned today. I will be joined by Premier Blaine Higgs, who will be talking about some of the things that's going on in New Brunswick, as well as some of his hobbies and some carpool karaoke. I'll also be joined by Angela Campbell, who will be talking about Imperial Theatre, as well as some upcoming shows and how you can go ahead and book tickets. Let's get started. Hi, Blaine. How are you?
I'm fine, Mandy-Lynn. How about yourself?
I'm great. Thanks so much for joining me. It's been a while.
It has been a while. I felt like you've been ignoring me, and I've been a little hurt by that.
I know. I didn't answer your pages. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I have sensitivities too.
Blaine, we've known each other for a while now. I think we've known each other roughly 6-7 years now before you were premiering, if that's a word. A lot has changed. I'm super excited to be joining you today. And anybody that's watching right now, I am currently joining at the office. And whose office am I in, Blaine?
Louis Legers, our chief of staff.
I did say I was auditioning for the job. Is it called auditioning or interviewing? I never get it right.
Well, I would say you're being interviewed, and he's on vacation, so he doesn't know this is happening. It'll be a surprise to him if he sees it online or something beforehand. So I feel like we should break it to him gently.
We'll get a running poll going for it, right?
Yeah.
And I have all my information, as I said, written on my hand. So we'll see how I do, but I'm not sure I'm going to be a great contestant.
You can give me a little background then, your CV background.
That's very fair. So if stand-up comedy, if singing, and having a I'm very introverted, as you know, so very shy.
You're hired. That's
perfect.
Good. We're there.
Thank God, because I already set my laptop up, so that's good to go. So, Blaine, so excited, happy to be joining you in person. I'll come over and join you in your office after we finish up over here, but I have some topics I'd like to discuss with you. You and I, it's been a minute, so there's been a lot of changes in terms of what's going on in New Brunswick. So I think we just jump right into it. How do you feel about that?
Well, I guess if we kind of go back a bit to where I started here 4 years ago. So in that time, that first year, we had a major flood, one of the worst ones in our history. The year after that, we got into the pandemic for 2 years. And so you kind of, say, when's all this trauma going to stop? And the fact is, it never stops in this office. We showed ourselves through the pandemic, I think, how strong that New Brunswick can be as a whole, how we work together in any sector. In New Brunswick, in government services, we became like a 1 GNB. So we basically didn't matter what department you worked in, we needed you on the front line, watching traffic or contact tracing or whatever. It was that sort of all hands on deck. And we even did it politically with the COVID cabinet committee, where we had everyone in the looking at the same information and then making the decisions to go forward. So opposition, we weren't out there chirping at each other and wasting valuable time. So I would say that, through all that, New Brunswick kind of got to be on the map about, what's happening in New Brunswick, what's happening in Atlantic Canada. And so since, we're kind of working our way out of COVID, and yes, it's still around and we still need to be vaccinated and take precautions. We've had an unprecedented growth in our province and population. We stagnated around 755, 760 for years. Actually, population went down a little bit in a few years. In the last 2 years, 2.5 years, we've grown by 50,000. We're actually 60,000. We're at 820 now. And so it's and our average age in the province has gone down. So we actually, our average age is about 46, or was, and now it's 46 and a half, or 45 and a half. So that means we got younger people coming into our province that are going to be the future. So it's really been an exciting time, and we're seeing it in every area of what that brings in terms of housing issues, in terms of, we're seeing inflation in the country. A lot of that brought on by energy pricing, and now we're trying to deal with that. But it happens particularly with us with growth issues, and like we've never seen before, never seen since Confederation.
Right, that's very good. And so I want to talk, speaking of growth, let's start off with trails. So as you know, New Brunswick, we have a huge array of trails, provincial, federal parks all around. And People can take in those wonderful fall kind of colors. We're moving into winter now. What do you think about all of the trails and outdoor activities? And you're a snowboarder or
Snowmobile.
snowmobile?
Yeah, and a skier, downhill skier as well.
Okay.
So I mean, I just like to have winter. I'm happy if we just get winter because that's a rare thing in the particularly southern half of the province. The actual outdoor activities that we have, be it the trails, and I mean, whether they're hikers, whether they're ATVers, snowmobilers, or skiing, cross country or other, people are finding, I think after COVID and people that are living in urban centers and went through all that same thing, they're finding, wow, I'd like to have a different lifestyle. I'd like to live in a province that has all of this available to them. And they're finding us, and the word's out. And so I think I've said now, we may have to get control of the situation and may put the tolls on just to hold some of the population back because people are finding us. They're telling other people. So our trail network on the snowmobile side alone, I think we have about 20,000 users in the province and 8,000 kilometers of trails, managed trails. And I'm talking trails that are like highways through the woods, and particularly in the northern half of the province. Amazing trails.
And a few weeks ago, we celebrated the Port of St. John. The 3 millionth cruise ship guest came in. Talk to me about that.
Well, I mean, that's, isn't it interesting how some things start? So 20 years ago, or even greater, a ship was blown into port because of seeking shelter from a storm. But the people in the city just put all hands on deck to be out there and showing what we had to offer. And that grew into this tremendous industry that took a beating during COVID without question, but has rebounded significantly back to where it was pre-COVID. So it's a huge boom for the city, but again, another window of people seeing New Brunswick. And they get a chance now to tour around through Fundy Park. They get a chance to see the surrounding areas, the lakes, the rivers, the valleys, and explore the city at the same time. So it's been a huge window for people to see our province and St. John particularly.
Absolutely. And I know that recently, in terms of cargo in St. John, speaking on the port, so the port and its partners, they've recently reached a milestone. Can you talk to me through that with the port, what that was?
I can. I remember 10 years ago. Well, if I even went back to my earlier days with Irving back in the 2005, 2008, if you saw a ship come into the main harbor, it was a big event. And now you go across the harbor bridge. And the other day, about 2 weeks ago, there were 3 cruise ships and 2 big container ships. So we have now gone from almost minimal cargo to 100,000 TEUs, which is a 20-foot container. So 100,000 of those passing through that port. And their target, even to possibly year end, is to hit a high of 200,000. I mean, it is astounding. And we're talking containers that are stacked six high, just rows upon row. The port is expanding its laydown areas because it needs more space. And CP, who are the rails provider into the St. John. CN also comes St. John, but they're primarily focused on Halifax. CP has made St. John the destination for Eastern Canada and the world. And so they're moving cargo in and out and anywhere in North America because they have the rail network to do that. And when they start talking about how big it could get, we're kind of saying, wow, really? You think you can have that much traffic? And they said, you know what? We just need you to think bigger because we can be so much bigger.
Okay, talking on thinking bigger, talk me through tourism. What has tourism been like?
Well, so we did in the pandemic, we took advantage, I would say, of people that couldn't go anywhere else. So let's get them to travel around New Brunswick. So we did a rebate program, and all of a sudden people are finding out, wow, we didn't know we had this in New Brunswick. And I don't know how many people, would say, we're so shocked. We went through this trail, we went up to the southeastern, up to the Canadian Peninsula, across the northern part of the province, really got to see our campgrounds, our beautiful scenery. So we've gone in the tourism category, not just within people traveling within, but coming into the country or province. I think in 2021, I got a number here that the sales jumped from, we were 700,000 in 2021. We're 1.1 million in 2022 year to date. And overnight visitors has gone from 6,621 to 82,000 in 2022. I mean, that's remarkable what we're seeing for interest in our province.
But what
And
about the
what
parks? What about the parks?
Park-
What does the parks?
parks, well, in a case, I guess if I took Hopewell Rocks as an example, 193,000 visitors year to date. That's up over 100% from what it was in 2021.
Wow.
Everywhere through our province, we're seeing campsite bookings. I think we had a record about 86,000 bookings. But what was interesting is when they opened up even for next year, and then this year they booked up in just weeks. Like wasn't months. It was like all of a sudden, wow, we're filling right up.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. And so to switch topics a little bit, Race Against the Tide. So that's the CBC show that we all know is hosted by Maestro Fresh, aka the godfather of Canadian hip hop. Can you talk me through a little bit about what that show is and what it's about and what they highlight, Blaine?
Well, I know some of the folks, and I know the family of one of the producers involved with that, and I guess when I look at that, it's showcasing our amazing high tides, and which are unique in the world, and then made a reality show around that of obviously building sand sculptures and then having to get them up and judged and because they're going to go down when the tide comes in. And I think we've seen it I think it's the third season or maybe the fourth. So it's certainly been popular. It's something that it's telling a story about our uniqueness again in New Brunswick. And the more that we're able to display to across Canada and to other jurisdictions, it is showcasing what we have here in our province. And this has been a great example of that. And we put more money into the arts and cultures and these productions because we want to establish that industry here.
Absolutely. And so we talked today and I said that I would Barbara Walters interview you. So let's get into medical seats. What does that look like? Medical seats in St. John.
Well, we did increase the seats. We brought them back from Mun in Newfoundland, and we increased it 10 more in St. John, and then we also increased in the UDM. So we're trying to maximize, our availability to graduate our own doctors here that want to stay here. Now, mind you, I have a doctor that graduated from, my daughter graduated from St. John, but she's not in New Brunswick. She married a cardiologist from Saskatchewan, and they're living in Moose Jaw. So if they hear this, I'm asking Sarah to move back home. Bring her husband.
Sarah, come back home. This is really an intervention.
Yeah. I mean, she can bring her husband. He's a great guy, so I'm fine with that. But it would be good, yeah. And I have another daughter in Guelph, and I'm telling her to bring her husband, come back home too. So anyway, I'm trying to get them all around me here and to look after, be here part of the Brunswick success story. Sure. But in terms of the health professionals, I would say that there's more to it, Mandy-Lynn, than just having more doctors. We know that there's more retiring, and it's the same with every demographic and every profession. But we need to be innovative in healthcare. We need to find better ways to deliver healthcare because we actually have, I think, either first or second highest doctor percentage per capita in the country. So it's about, okay, how do we maximize what we have? How do we deliver healthcare in a different manner? And if I use some of those examples, I would look at the new HealthLink. So in HealthLink, we had a wait list that was identified as 70,000. That's now down to 54,000. And we're connecting through virtual connections, patients to actual doctors. Now, it might not be the same doctor every time, but it'll be a doctor that has your file. And as doctors sign up to this, it gives, because what we're finding is the emergency rooms are often tied up with people that don't have nowhere else to go. So they go to the ER, but they're not emergencies. But you can't blame them because it's the only place to go. But we're really biting into that now. So that sort of innovation is what it's going to take. Clinical care versus one-to-one, like I have a doctor assigned to me for 20 years. Doctors don't want to work that way anymore. And we're seeing that, the new docs coming out, they don't want 4, 5, 6,000 patients. They want a patient practice sharing, a clinical practice, where they have several colleagues that they work with. They can share ideas, they can support each other. It gives them better schedule, flexibility, and work-life balance. So it's a new demographic in how this is working out. But ultimately, we're going to fix this patient connect situation.
Absolutely. And what is your feelings on that?
Well, it's real, but I would say our province is certainly in better shape than many. We know the healthcare system is challenged across the country, but it's not good enough to say, give me more money and I'll do better. Okay, well, what do you mean by doing better? What is it going to be? So I'm going to use an example of that, and that's the ophthalmology clinic that we've opened in Bathurst. So basically what we're doing is we're putting a real focus on cataract surgery and get the wait list down from like 2 years, 2.5 years to less than 6 months, and do it in less than 6 months. So that's going to be a huge benefit to the patients. Our shift here is a focus on patients, a focus on people that work and live in our province. So that's where the healthcare center is. So we need our system to be reactive to the needs of the patient.
Thank you so much for that, Mr. Premier. And so for local economics, let's shift a little bit. So the provincial and federal governments announced investments to help razor contact manufacturing in St. John. Can you talk to me about what that looks like in terms of enhancing production?
Well, I think in what we did during COVID is that we found that there were many businesses that were limited by the lack of ability to innovate, to expand into a bigger market. And so we've leveraged off some of the big industries that are here, like the McCain's that have worldwide presence, like Cook's that has worldwide presence, and said, okay, how do we tie into their market and where they move around in different countries? But more so looking at a company that wanted to expand but didn't have either the capability or the engineering information or design information or the technology required. So we've helped them develop new technology to expand in the marketplace. And I met a young couple here over the weekend that have a business in Tracadie, and they're making N95 masks and maybe other surgical or medical supplies. And they've started up in the last few years, and they have, I was told, 80 employees. And the young lady came from, she was out west for several years and then moved back home to Tracadie and is a pharmacist, I think, by profession, but started this business. We've got those kind of stories in every corner of the province. And it's leveraging technology, leveraging the ability to expand your business. And when we talked about the St. John, the port on the containers, when you have 200,000 containers moving in and out worldwide and shipping connections anywhere in the world, rail connections anywhere in North America, boy, we have an advantage that many provinces only dream about.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. So I want to shift now and talk a little bit about communication. So you and I first met, to go back to communications, when I was running the campus radio show and I was being the mom of 3 in university. And you said, of course, I'd love to come on. And we had a long, extensive conversation about how you'd mentioned any kind of platform to be able to voice somebody's thoughts and opinions, that it's a great idea to have, and creating is important. So we talked a lot about arts and we talked a lot about creation. Why is arts and culture important to you?
It's the fabric that holds us all together, and it's what we do in life. I mean, if you talk about family and the relationships and the bonds that are created, and then you talk about our province, which is unique and its bilingual nature, but the culture of both cultures in our province is how do we maximize that? That's why, Mandy, you've heard me talk a lot about the Anglophone education system, because I want all of our kids that are coming out of the system to be able to communicate in both languages. And right now, we're in a situation where we're only about, or less than 30% are able to do that. So 70% aren't able to speak in both languages after 50 years. And I'm saying, wow, we've got some opportunities here. And one of the things that my eldest daughter said to me, and they all went through French immersion, she said to me, Dad, when she was traveling with me during the campaign, the first campaign, and she said, I had no idea what the vibrancy and the culture was in Northern New Brunswick and how dynamic and what we can learn from each other. She learned none of that in school. So what are we missing? So if you talk about the tie that binds, it's the cultural, social interactions. They participated a lot in the plays and musicals at school. I mean, I'm being an engineer. I guess people always say, well, you're an engineer. So sometimes they think, well, but I performed in the Nutcracker, I might add. I danced with my daughter a waltz, and I remember she said that we were talking about the moves, and I said, now Rachel, you need to talk to me here about this to make sure I go right when I need to go right. I go left.
I have questions too. I have questions.
Yeah, yes. So Ray said, Ray said, well, Dad, you need to learn your own moves. I can't be directing you through here. And I said, well, Ray, look, put it this way. There's 6 or 7 fathers up here dancing with their daughters. But I said, if I mess up, they won't look at me. They're going to be looking at you. So you should help me. All right, Dad, I'll help you. So, so we had a wonderful time. But my point is that's what we remember. Those experiences are what we remember. It's not the math class or the physics class. It's these experiences socially we remember. And that's why the arts, the culture, the performances, the interaction, personal interaction is so key.
Okay, so talk me through when you were in school. You're an engineer by trade, but in school, what's something somebody would be surprised to know about you? Like, were you in a band before? Can you sing? Do you have a secret talent?
Oh, I have many secret talents. So I was in a graduating class of 17.
Okay.
So pretty small class. I competed heavily with 3 of the top students in the class, all girls. And I never could beat them, never, ever. And so I was always coming in fourth. And then we had a typing program, and it was an elective that we all took. And we were all in academic, but we had this typing. So I beat them in typing. Well, then the teacher said, she filled out this survey and said, well, I'd like to know if I favor anyone in the class. So she had all this, do you favor anyone? So guess what? Those 3 put my name on, that she favored me. So guess what? Did I ever beat them again in typing? Nope, never. But I had a shift change in grade 10. I met my girlfriend, which is my wife now.
Yes.
And we met at the water cooler at Canterbury High. And so I started to refocus in grade 10 about the long term. So yeah, I wanted to, obviously get through school and all, and I was planning to go to university. But I started focusing on my girlfriend, and we married when we graduated from university. So that was kind of my high school sweetheart. That's right. And we're married now 44 years.
Congratulations. That's phenomenal. So
it is.
in terms of what was your very
And I did sing in a group too.
You do sing?
I did sing in a group. I did, yes.
Okay.
Our girls we had the girls all play instruments. I fooled around with the guitar for a long time and never really mastered it.
Okay.
But
can you play anything on the guitar? Can you play anything on the guitar?
Oh, I can a few tunes. Yeah, I haven't played it for a long time, but yeah. But it I always said my rhythm didn't seem to work out right. Like I played basketball and I enjoyed that, and I was always quick and reactionary, but the rhythm and music always seemed to be a challenge for me. But we sang together, and we did it in different performance things in church, and we have these plays at Christmas, and we used to do these skits and plays. So the girls play. I mean, one of my daughter's a drummer, the other plays the violin and the piano, and they all sing. So it's been, we did a lot of family things, and my wife plays the piano.
She does the piano. Okay, and so just to shift a little bit. So as you know, Port City Personalities, we've been featured on James Corden's show a couple of times, from interviewing Nick, James Corden's boss. And we talked about carpool karaoke a little bit. You and I have talked, every interview we bring it back to music, because you and I are huge music fans, and we're both huge radio and TV fans. If you were on James Corden right now and you were in carpool karaoke, what would he be playing right now and singing with you?
Well, for me, it'd be Cats in the Cradle.
Cats in the Cradle.
Here, you remember that one?
Let's go. Let's start from Let's Just Go.
Child arrived just the other day. He came to the world in the usual way. But
can we start the chorus?
Pardon?
We go to the chorus part, but I got to go from there.
Okay.
So I don't look at.
All right.
Go from the chorus.
All right. Well, I see that. Cats in the cradle and the silver spoon. Little boy grew to the man in the moon.
Man in the moon. When you coming home, son, I don't know when.
We'll get together then.
That's a good one.
We'll get together then. Yeah. And there's several verses there. That's right.
And then if you had to do a pop
song. The Stones, I suppose, start me up.
If you had to do a pop song, what would you be doing? If you were at like a pop song, if he said, Blaine, we need a pop song.
Well, let me see.
Would we do some Lady Gaga? That's what's in now with the kids. I'm 40 in June, so I gotta say, would we do some Gaga?
Yeah. Well, you probably could relate to that. If I think of a pop song, let's see, what would we do right now?
We're
Yeah, I'm
aging
going back probably a little farther. I'm getting back to some of the,
Okay, that's
what
okay.
was.
You go a little bit back.
Yeah, well, I'll get
Anyway,
back to like
yeah.
the Stones start me up.
Oh, yeah. That's a good one. So I want to talk to you now about the Leafs. What are the Leafs? Oh,
A disappointment, constant disappointment. But
yeah.
you know what the Leafs have been is
Hmm.
a lot of people, all through life you face adversity, right? Always.
Right.
So no one gives you, and adversity comes in many measures. Obviously, a lot can be a lot more significant than a hockey game. But
Hmm.
the constant disappointment, basically uh, prepares you for disappointment. So the Leafs have never really failed to disappoint,
Okay.
right? So I get all wound up at Stanley Cup time, and I'm thinking, okay, this is their year, and they did set a record last year. The record last year, I think, was the first time that 5 years in a row, the a team has gone out the first round. The same team has gone out the first round in a hockey series, and then I think they're the longest losing streak of any NHL team. So they've got some records there, and in this year, every Toronto fan, and why I'm a Toronto fan, I really can't explain it. It's just that it turned out that way years ago. And I've had all kinds of reasons to abandon ship and say, look, I'm done with you characters. But there still are several of my friends that have hung to it. So I'm convinced I will see them win the Stanley Cup one more time.
Okay. So what is that jersey behind you?
So the jersey behind me is number 34, well, which most people would say it's Austin Matthews. However, I received that jersey from at a meeting with all the premiers, and Premier Doug Ford gave us all jerseys. But 34 for me, and it's all signed by the premiers of the country at that time. This has
Wow.
been a couple of years ago. And 34, I'm the 34th premier of New Brunswick.
Yeah.
So that's why. So that is special for me. That's why I bought the cabinet and put it in. And I told my wife that I said, won't this look great in the living room? And she's not convinced.
Blaine, I know you're a busy guy. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm going to join you over in your office in a minute. Is there anything else you'd like to leave with to let anybody that's watching right now know and understand?
Well, Mandy-Lynn, I appreciate that. I appreciate having this discussion on kind of a more friendly kind of situation where people can realize that I'm human too, right? And I know a lot of people I remember would say, well, you never don't smile much. I actually do smile a whole lot. But when I'm on an interview, it's not easy, and if people are kind of hammering away at questions, you kind of say, oh, okay. And my wife has said, you're kind of stone-faced when you're not answering any questions. And I said, well, what am I supposed to do? Do you kind of because my resting face is kind of naturally stern. So I'm trying to work on that. And if you got any thoughts of how I can improve on that, so I can appear more friendly, but yet not smiling at a very difficult question, I'm trying to work on that. But I want to thank you. How long have you been in the business now?
Well, it's been a while. It's been, I think, maybe 7 years, going on 8 years. And
7 years.
yeah, going on 8
And your
years.
kids, you said, how many children did you say you have?
I have
You
3,
say
19, 14,
3.
and 12. Yeah.
Wow. Imagine that. You look like a student yourself. I don't know how that works.
Right.
So
I have I have a trick for you on the smiling part of it. I remember
okay.
when you go for your photo at the motor vehicle, or when you're or when,
passport.
Yeah, you have to be so serious on it, and it's almost like I always struggle with that. The same thing. I'm polar opposite though. I'm always too happy, like I'm always smiling, and it's my friends are creeped out. So one of my best friends, I smile while I sleep. So it's bored. It's like too creepy.
You really?
I was
Oh,
born
wow.
with too much serotonin, so I'm always just unusually too happy. So it's always like, so I'm probably not the person to ask about that, because you're like, I'm always a 10 and you need to be a
5, eh? Well, that's it. Well, maybe there's a blend there somewhere. So I'm working on that. So when I'm resting face, I'm not really angry or upset. It's just kind of where it all lands. But I'm working on that.
So thank you so much, folks. Make sure if you're watching today, you take advantage of some of the trails, the snowmobiling, some outdoor activities. There's lots to be said. And Blaine, we'll talk again soon. Thank you so much for your time today. We certainly appreciate it here.
You're very welcome, Mandy-Lynn, and I appreciate the opportunity. Have a great day.
Angela from Imperial Theater, my friend. How are you?
I'm so good, Mandy-Lynn. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks so much. Thanks for taking time to stop by today and tell me about what's been happening with Imperial.
Oh, I've always got time for you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. So you just came back from a trip from Montreal. Tell me about that.
Yeah, we're full on in this season, but we're already planning for next season. So I was there. It was an international booking conference. So saw lots of incredible work, tons of circus and dance and theater, like just amazing things. Yeah.
Nice. How long were you down for?
Uh, oh my gosh, it felt like weeks and weeks, but it was only 7 days.
Very nice. And what's it like to be back again after being away? Nice to be home, I suppose.
Always, yeah. I mean, I love traveling, and it's a fortunate perk to what I do. But it is nice to come home. I love this city.
So let's talk about Imperial Theater. I was up. There was a beautiful ceremony for the Queen that was there. So we could maybe start with that. Talk me through that.
Wait a minute, you were here for the Queen's funeral?
I sure was. Yes.
How did I not see? Well, I'm so
I
sorry.
was low key for a change. I think I was low key. You're used to my bright colors. I was probably in black that day, I think.
It was very, very early in the morning.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, we were so, I mean, I don't want to say that it was an honor to do that, but with all of the new digital equipment we've been able to procure during COVID, and with the new DCP projector we have, when the Queen passed, we thought, we're a public venue and we're publicly funded, and especially with our federal funding, I mean, it actually comes in the name of Her Majesty the Queen, and we thought. It's she was such a huge and important figure through our history. I mean, good and bad, but an incredible woman. And we just thought, we have the time available to do that, and we had the staff available to do it. So we thought people may want to come together to celebrate her life and experience that, that entire morning together. So we're glad we were able to do it. And I was astonished. It was, we opened the theater doors at 5:45 in the morning. And I thought, oh, I don't know if it may just be us with all kinds of coffee and scones and tea. But there were, I think, almost 75 people came to share that experience together.
And it was quite interesting. I talked to some of the folks that had met the Queen before, or that she's touched and impacted their life. So I think that it was quite magical, really.
It did feel that there were, this sort of camaraderie that instantly happened with everyone who came together. I mean, the royal family just has such a public life, and it seems so infused in our Canadian life as well, that it did feel like an aunt had passed away, someone that you
Yes.
you knew, Yeah.
Yes, I think it was wonderful, and and again, that's another example of Imperial, how how the focus is bringing people together, and that goes hand in hand with what you and I talked about months ago and years ago. So anybody that's watching right now, talk them through the Imperial experience, I like to call it.
Oh, I love the Imperial experience. We've worked. It's very hard. It's this beautiful building that the community came together to restore, and it has. Just its natural aesthetic has this sense of grandeur that I think can be intimidating for some people. That there's a perception that goes along with it, that it's all pearls and black tie and suits. And we've worked really, really hard in the last decade to sort of change that perception. And yes, coming here is such a special experience, but we want you to create your own special experience, whatever that means to you. So if getting dressed up to the nines is your thing, then do it. But jeans and t-shirts are also fine. We just want to bring people together so that they have that opportunity to connect with other people who are enjoying that live experience together. And not to downplay the seriousness of the pandemic, because it was just, it was a horrific 2 years for everyone. I mean, to experience that globally. But it really, one of the positive things it did for um, for us and the team within is that it really, really reinforced the idea of how important human connection is. And we're an organization that digs into technology. We love new technology. We love to see it implemented in new ways on stage. We love it for ease of access for customers to be able to buy tickets online and to be able to find what they need on the website. But ultimately, it's all of that technology. We just want to see it bring people together and experience, have those experiences together, real life, in person.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for that, Angela. Things are open back up. Things are going back full force now. Talk me through some of the events that we just went through, that we just had at Imperial Theater. What kind of shows, if anybody hasn't got out, have they missed?
Oh my gosh, it's really after the last shutdown last winter with Omicron, it really felt like in March when we were allowed to open back up to 100%. It was nerve-wracking. We were really nervous. We didn't know how people were going to respond, and we didn't know how people were going to respond coming back together. It was a pretty stressful situation to not be allowed to gather and then all of a sudden be allowed to gather. I think people were probably more anxious about it than they even realized when they got here. But holy moly, it was joyous to see people coming back. And it was in record numbers. Like, we were selling out shows in May and June of last year. And I thought, this is really quick. We didn't expect people to get that comfortable that fast. So we had, podcasters, Nat and Tat came through with a huge show. We had dance recitals last year for the first time in a few years. St. John Theater Company was back. So it ramped up really fast. And then, over the summer, we had Jason Mraz and Colin James was back. So like those big name touring artists were coming back, music artists were coming back. And then Alyssa Edwards, our first RuPaul drag queen, sold out show. And Steve-O from Jackass with 2 sold out shows. Like, it's just been, it was just been a roller coaster of incredible talent that's been coming through. So we're really happy.
And the Robin Williams tribute, that was a nice one.
Oh yeah, I forgot. See, there's just so many. I forgot even about him.
Yeah, it's hard to even list them all, but it was, yeah, and that was it. That was another great show that I had a chance, opportunity to check out. There's so many. I want to see all of them. And I always look forward to seeing you there, because you're the mom of the place, standing in the back, making sure everything's going all right and going decent on it, and seeing the success of the shows. But talk me through some upcoming shows. What do we have to look forward to?
We're going to head full on into Christmas now. So it's all Christmas all the time until December 24th. So St. John Theater Company loads in next week with Miracle on 34th Street. So that's happening, which is a wonderful play. They've got 5 curtains. They've got a matinee on Saturday, so lots of opportunities to see that. And that's so wonderful, because it really amplifies all of the incredible local talent that we have.
Right.
I love that show. We've got the Ennis sisters are coming for a Christmas concert. They're just wonderful and lovely, East Coast artists. So we're really happy to invite them back. Our good friend is coming back with God is a Scottish Drag Queen's Christmas show. So if you're a comedy fan, this is a Christmas comedy show, really fun, and really excited that's happening. We've got the incredible Serena Ryder coming. I know, she's so great. It's been so many years since she's been here.
How long has it been since she's been here, Angela? It's been a while, huh?
I'm gonna say it's been at least 10 years. Yeah, maybe 12. Yeah. She did take some time off touring, so this is sort of coming back and getting back into the groove of things. As we see artists, they have that sort of that ebb and flow in their career. They take some time off and pursue other things. Our retro film, Christmas film for December, is actually Gremlins.
Oh,
which we thought would be really, really fun. Yeah.
I
Um, uh,
know.
We've got Gallabelle coming back with the Nutcracker, which they do every year.
Yes.
Um, TNB is coming with the Christmas show, Jane Austen Christmas show, The Wickhams, which is a lovely,
Yes.
a beautiful play, great for all ages. Um, and what else do we have? Oh my gosh, Christmas with the Cops. We can't forget Christmas with the Cops.
Oh, shout out to Sandra, Scott, and team. Love you all.
And they've sold out, so I'd
I was
love to
gonna
tell you
say
there
they're
are
sold out,
tickets
aren't they? Is
totally
there a
sold
Mike?
out.
Yeah, the Mike Bigger Christmas show. I think we have that one coming up.
Mike
There's too
Bigger is
many.
coming as well. There's so many. So there's
Tomato. Our friends are tomato.
exactly.
Yes. Oh, we have so many.
So we try to do when it comes to Christmas, we try to find all kinds of different experiences that people can enjoy. And of course, we're open for St. John Sparkles as well. So if you're uptown and around, please stop in. We're going to have hot apple cider that people can grab, and you can take a little tour of the theater. So yeah. So all in all, Christmas is looking like it's going to be fantastic.
I cannot wait. This is already this year's ramped up, and it's been more than amazing. And it sounds like there's a lot of stuff coming up. So I am going to open up to some questions that I have for you from some of our watchers.
Oh,
are you ready?
Wonderful. I love questions. I love it even more when I know the answer. So,
so we didn't prep her for any of the answers this time for it.
oh gosh.
These will be really hard ones. No, the very first one is, what is the process like in terms of planning? So for the new year, how do you determine what shows will play, and how long in advance are people planning to come and to do a show?
That is a really excellent question, and it's a very layered process. So right now, in terms of curated shows that Imperial Theater is going to invest in and bring to the community, we're in the process right now of going to conferences, going to see full length productions, and deciding what that season looks like. Our philosophy when we do it is we honestly believe that living in St. John, New Brunswick, people who choose to live here and make this their community, and our surrounding areas, of course, like we try to service all of southern New Brunswick, so St. Stephen all the way to Sussex. What we try to do is bring as wide a variety of performances as possible. So that means all genres of music, circus, children's shows, theater, dance, comedy. And we do it in a way where we are really working closely with other arts organizations in the community. So like we don't want to compete with Symphony New Brunswick. We want to bring in artists that will augment their season. We don't want to compete with St. John Theatre Company. We want to complement their season. And we don't want to be bringing things that we don't need to, because those needs are already being met in the community. But like if there are 100 people in St. John who are jazz aficionados and want to come to the best jazz show, that's what we want to do. We want to bring it in. So it's not always about selling out a show, although sellouts are wonderful and it's amazing. Sometimes 100 people for a jazz show is exactly the right audience, and exactly that's the success we're looking for. And of course, then we also operate as a rental facility. So artists who are out on tour can use our facility as a stopping point as they go through the Maritimes. So we're constantly in conversation with professional promoters who do tours like that, to understand who they're bringing, so that we're not creating direct competition in that way. Does that make sense?
That makes total sense. So it sounds like there's a lot of layers to making sure that a show is absolutely amazing, and a great team also, it sounds like.
Yeah. And it's funny, I think that people have the impression that we work sort of in a silo, that it's just St. John. But we work very, very closely with the Capitol Theatre in Moncton, and the Playhouse in Fredericton, and the Confederation Center in Charlottetown, and all kinds of smaller presenters all through Atlantic Canada. So that, because we need buying power sometimes. a lot of the world thinks that Canada ends at Montreal. So if we can work together to build a really nice tour for somebody, we have a better chance of encouraging them to come into the Maritimes rather than each of us working individually and just trying to get the show for one night. If we can help artists come into the Maritimes, we can route them and work together. Because sometimes it's a little bit. I mean, in all honesty, it's a lot of the time it's more expensive for us to bring artists to New Brunswick than it is for Ontario to do them because they're based in Ontario, or Ontario's just Toronto's a bigger hub. So in a lot of ways, the cost is higher for us because we have to consider longer travel times and bigger fees to get them, to make it worth their while to come.
Yeah, and that makes sense. So let me ask you this: when people find out what you do, how often do they come up and say, "Hey, can you book my favorite artist? Can you get me so and so in?" What will they talk me through that?
I love it. It happens all the time. But
I've probably done it to you.
but we love that. I mean, in all honesty, we have a very small staff, and so we can only be we can only know so much. So yeah, we want to know what our community would like to see. If there is a type of show or a new specific artist who might work, we want to hear about it because we'll go and investigate it. We'll figure it out. We'll contact agents, find out what that looks like, and then start talking to other theaters to see if it's something that might work in their markets as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I guess if people are looking to book the Imperial or they're looking to book, what's that process like for folks? So you'd mentioned that when artists are traveling, they can book, and is there a big process to that? Do they need to have a year out in advance? Because I know with venues, and for anybody that is watching, because I know that's a few people have asked me that question, but isn't there quite a process to it in terms of making sure that timing and attention to detail? Talk me through that.
Yeah, there are so many considerations. So, one of the biggest issues with touring first is just the date routing. So if we'll use Alyssa Edwards as an example. Her promoter would have called. I say called. He probably did. He probably
right.
He probably emailed. Contacted, all of the theaters in Atlantic Canada with a seating capacity that worked for them. So, let's say it's anybody with 750 seats or more. And he's going to inquire about dates in a time range. So like, what do you have in April of 2023? So we would all respond, and then that promoter would then see if there were enough dates close enough together that he could route through a reasonable tour. And then we would start talking about, does the show fit, for example, in the theater? For the most part, we've got a fairly large stage and can accommodate just about anything, but not all stages can. And so, there's a technical aspect that needs to be considered before any booking happens. And then there's a contractual process that happens. We have a very intense contract that we have to go through that everyone has to agree on. They'll have amendments they want to make. And then essentially we become the venue and the ticket sales vendor for that rental client if they're ready to.
Everything. So you handle the box office as well. So box office, everything's handled when anybody, so they have the ease of mind of coming and doing their event and making sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And we think that's important. I mean, as a venue that sees, sometimes we do 200 shows a year. We want to make sure that patrons are getting the same experience every time that they come, that they can trust when they buy a ticket from us that their information is protected and that they're going to have the same ease of access and experience every time they come. So that continuity of service is really important to us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. And so talk a little bit about the process in terms of if somebody was to come in and we talked about comedy. So if somebody came in to do stand-up comedy, then that's a much different process than, let's say, the Nutcracker, where you probably have a week to set up, right? What's that
Absolutely.
like in terms of getting everything, because I want people to understand. The point of this question is for folks that are watching to understand the process of, we talked about layering for choosing and selecting a show, but this is to help folks understand the process of, okay, this is what it's like when we're putting on a show, because it's really quite spectacular to see the behind the scenes on things. I think
Yeah, and it's and you're right. It's, you know, the spectrum is huge. You know,
yeah.
stand-up comedians tend to be fairly low maintenance. You know, we need a stool, we need a bottle of water, and we need a microphone,
Yeah, right.
and then we need someone to turn a light on. I mean, you know, it's
Yeah,
essentially
literally.
yeah. You know, and so yeah, with the Nutcracker, Gala Ballet is in the theater for a total of 5 days, but they only do two performances. So it takes time to build the set. It takes time to build the lighting plot. You know, lights have to be moved around. They have to be refocused based on whatever the lighting designer has created for that show. So there's a whole process as a show comes in, how it's built on the stage. For us, generally, you know, most professional artists have all of that done before they even hit the road. So the show is built, everything that they need is already done. So they're sharing that information with us. Our technical crew would be prepping it before they come in the building. So for the majority of our artists, they're loading in, setting up, doing a show, and loading out in the same day.
Oh,
It's a
wow.
Yeah, for the most part. Plays, circus, and dance take a little bit more. When you're building sets, when you have really complicated lighting designs, like dance, for example, usually has very complicated lighting designs because they don't have sets. So they rely on lighting to really help set atmosphere, mood, and create effects. And then you have to, you know, I mean, digital projection is a huge aspect of a lot of shows now. And people are using that. It's actually probably created a bit of a bit more ease in terms of setup because a lot of people are using projection as opposed to physical sets now, which is incredible. It makes it easier to tour. But yeah, I mean, you know, we do a lot of circus, and that takes time. You need professional riggers to come in. You know, there are stress points on the, you know, that if we're hanging people from the ceiling, for lack or from our grid, you know, we need professionals in to make sure that that is going to be safe.
Right. Yeah.
You know,
Right.
so yeah, every show is a little bit different, but for the most part, more than like 80% of our shows are in and out in a single day.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you think about setting shows up, what is the most challenging kind of show to set up? Would that be, would it be like, not like, what would take the most amount of work? Like in terms of like, would it be a 1 week setup, a 2 week? What's the
Um,
longest setup time you remember, I guess, maybe? How about that?
I think the longest setup, well, I think and we've done a few interesting things. I think on a regular basis, probably St. John Theatre Company. They're in 3 times a year. Their production is big. They're in for a full 7 days.
Yep.
And that's, you know, they're moving, you know, large set pieces and coming in. And so it's a large, it is a bigger setup.
Yep.
For the most part, in terms of traveling shows, I would say the ones that are probably the most complicated are when we do Broadway musicals. So,
And the most fun.
and the most fun. They're incredible. So essentially, we have hundreds of pounds of curtains and cloths and trims and lights that hang in the air in the stage on the stage all the time. When we do a Broadway musical, I'll use Jesus Christ Superstar as an example.
Mhm.
Um, 4 tractor trailers of sets, lights, sound equipment. They come with everything. So the entire day before, we take everything out of the air. Everything except the main curtain gets stripped off of every line in the stage, and our PA system even comes down out of the air because they install their own. They would load in at 7 in the morning. It would, on average, it takes 50 to 60 local crew. So we would have to
Wow.
hire an additional 50 people to the, you know, our core 10 that we have. And they usually get the show up in about 8 hours. So it's unloading 4 transport trucks, getting sets up, getting lights in the air. And pulling it all together, testing, doing it all. And then there'll be a whole truck just of costumes, makeup, wardrobe stuff,
My gosh.
wigs. Yeah. I mean, every square inch of the theater is just packed full of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So and then the show happens, and then it's tear everything down after and start again.
And then it's tear everything down and go again. Yep.
Thank you. Yeah. And so
Yeah.
what is the most rewarding part of your job, Angela?
Oh, you know what? I think, I mean, I love the process of finding this nugget of a show, something that that our community would never have discovered if we hadn't discovered it and brought it to the theater, and then sitting in our house and being part of that experience as other people are seeing it for the first time. I always love falling in love with a show that I see somewhere else and then bringing it here and then falling in love with it all over again in this theater, because it's just such an incredible experience. But I think all of our education and outreach that we do, which I don't know that people are as aware of all of the things that we do outside of shows on our stage. So every time, well, not every time, but as often as we can, if we're bringing professional artists to the community, we do everything that we can to connect them to the cultural community or to the general public at large in other ways. So, for example, a few years ago, we had Ed Asner
Yes.
with his one-man show, which was a man and his prostate was the name of the show.
I remember. Yes.
Yeah, he was in his mid 80s at the time. He travels with his daughter, just the sweetest guy.
Yep.
And he agreed to go to the Shannocks in Milledgeville
Yep.
and give a talk to a bunch of the residents and the nursing staff and the orderlies and the support workers who are all there. He
Yep.
spent an entire afternoon with them, connecting with them and chatting with them and getting to know them. And I think, it's those types of experiences that we're able to provide that are just sort of like, those are the things that really fill my cup.
Absolutely. Angela, thank you so much for your time today. I really, really appreciate it. Make sure everyone that's watching right now, check out Imperial Theater, go onto the website. Big thanks to you today, Angela. Really appreciate you
Thank
always
you.
coming by. You're the best.
I'll talk your ear off any day.
We appreciate it. Thank you so much, Angela.
Thanks so much. Have a great day.
Thank you.